This past week and a half, we've been practicing with our painting techniques with acrylic paints. Before we begin our first initial project utilizing those techniques, I want to go over value and tone. Here are some Jefferson student examples. Let's review once more on how to create value and tone as seen here. It's possible to create a value scale with every color in your palette. Once you've painted a grayscale, it's well worth the time painting a series of value scales with every color you use frequently. Then if you're struggling to get the right tone in a painting, you can easily consult your value scale. Before beginning on our next project, you'll be creating a value scale based off of the colors that you will be choosing to work with. With oils or acrylics, the easiest way to lighten a color is to add white. But this is not the only way and not always the ideal, as it reduces the intensity of the color. Here the color red was switched to pink by adding the color white. You can also lighten a color by adding another color of a lighter value. For example, to lighten a dark red, you can add a little yellow. Be careful though not to add too much to create equal amounts of one color, or you will get orange for this particular example. We want to just use a small amount to lighten the color. Exactly what colors do when mixed together takes practice and experimentation, but it's time well spent. That is why we began our acrylic paint unit mixing as many colors as possible and creating our very own color swatch library that we can use as a reference during our painting. In order to make a two-dimensional painting and turn it into a three-dimensional painting, one needs to stop and look at the tonal range. This is what separates us from elementary painting, seen here, to high school or advanced painting, seen on the right. If your painting feels flat, take a step back and look for areas that are two-dimensional. Squint your eyes. If there is an area that is difficult to make out, it is missing value. Your painting should have form and not feel flat. Notice the highlight in the top of the sphere and the shadow along the edge. This gives the illusion of form, where in comparison, the image on the top includes one solid color which feels incomplete, basic, and amateur. How light or dark a tone or value appears also depends on what other tones are near it. If your background is dark, choose a color that is lighter in hue for your subject to allow it to stand out, and of course vice versa. Another option is to use complementary colors. For example, if your subject is mostly orange, as seen in this example, use a shade of blue for your background. Lastly, start your painting with your midtones, or in other words, your basic colors that you're going to lay down first. Once you have those established, decide if you would like to start adding your lighter tones for highlights or darker tones for shadows. I typically like to start with my lighter tones. When your painting is finished, check whether you've still got your darkest darks and lightest lights. If you haven't, the painting isn't finished yet and you need to adjust the tones.